secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Good day, everybody. It's the 1st of November 2014, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. How you doing, everybody? This is UCY.tv with the Solvinur Event. I'm your host, Walter. If you go to UCY.tv, mouse over shows, you get a list of all the appearances. And if you click on any of them, you end up in the chat room. Some people are already there. I see Honey is active, Cap is active. Don't know about the other people there. What's that? Les8 has joined. Haven't seen you before. Welcome, Les. And Jules is there, but I don't know if she's actually there. Ocelli is in there for 12 minutes. So that's a lot. Vince, welcome, buddy, and two Anons that actually just joined also. What's up? Today we're going to do some more trivium. I think we will finish what we started last week. It's an essay by Jared Sanchez. He did agree to come on with me at some point, but as happens a lot, the communication just breaks down, and I don't like to, I've asked it once, and if you say okay, then I'm like, well, when would you like to go? And then it's like, well, not now, and maybe in the future, and then I'm like, all right, that's enough, I'm not going to ask again. If you want to be on my show, you will contact me. It's as simple as that. Don't want to nag these people. So this is where we were. Finding the argument is the next heading. Argument is an important term here. Hey, Lady Pitbull, welcome. And it has to do also with what's coming up a little bit later. He's going to mention some fallacies. It's important that you understand what an argument is, so that you understand what a fallacy is. Fallacy is error in reasoning. So when reading a book or listening to a speech or a lecture, or our most important task is to find out what it is the author, authority, right? or a speaker is trying to say. What is their point or points? With a book you have more time to go through each sentence, piece together the ones that really seem to support each other and discover the argument that way. In a live setting, and not live setting, it can be more difficult, but it is required of us nonetheless. What truth is there to the statements? Does the argument rest upon false premises? What problems does the author attempt to solve? Which ones were solved, which ones not? Is the author missing key information? Yeah, usually that's the case. When reading a book about certain topics, a lot of them, like education, just for an example, there's only actually one author in that case. I hope he's doing well. I can't remember his name at the moment. You guys know how bad I am with names, right? It'll come to me during the show, I hope. But he's been a teacher for a long time. He's also won awards for teaching. If an employer knew that this was a student of his, he would certainly pick him above any other ones. And this is because this teacher actually found out what the current Prussian education system is all about. And he at a certain point stopped teaching in that way because he didn't like to hurt the children, right? So missing key information, that happens a lot. Also because information is being kept from us. That's a way of lying, telling half-truths, using only a few specific facts to get people to come to a certain conclusion, leaving out other information. That's also a form of lying. Have they missed important questions relevant to the subject? Also happens a lot. Is their argument concealed, improved, or diminished by persuasive elements? Do their statements make their point by cause and effect? Are they unfounded? When you're the author, you have to find your own argument. You have to know what it is you want to say and how you're going to say it. You have the choice to make your audience work for understanding or to lay everything out clearly and cleanly. Mortimer Adler's How to Read a Book is a great resource for more understanding in this way. And for the student, an ACT/SAT, I have no clue what that is, guys, prep book on reading will show you the guidelines that test makers are looking for. Yeah, is that so important to read then? I mean, test makers, they test how well you can repeat what you've been told, right? Not your understanding of how the world works. Also, the quote-unquote argument in math is much different than the arguments in the humanities, and they require much more straightforward logical skills. Although much less beautiful to the ear, the arguments of Euclid are arguments nonetheless, and they require of us utmost diligence in their discovery. In a quote by Mortimer J. Adler, who I guess could be another authority if speaking about education. We seek in our reading to go from a state of understanding less to understanding more. Yeah. Define terms is the next heading. When having a conversation or learning something new, there are bound to be words that carry very specific meanings. Find out what those are. If you don't know the definitions of the words or terms, then you really can't begin to understand what is being said. How does Shakespeare's definition of love differ from Voltaire's? what did Sally really mean when she said, "It's fine, just go without me"? And then he underlines the word fine. Oftentimes, you can learn the definition of a term by consulting a common dictionary. Yeah, if you do use dictionaries, get an old one as well as a new one. This doesn't work in every situation though, such as in law practice, where seemingly common terms have very different and specific meanings. Black Law's Dictionary. Other times, you have to work hard to understand what a term means. Again, you can't really know what's being said if you don't know how the terms are defined. One man's economic development might be another man's losing my home because the rich man wants to put a shopping mall here. Labor means one thing to the capitalist and another to the tyrant. When learning a new subject, such as Algebra 2, you'll come across new words that seem foreign to you. Always underline those terms and work hard at figuring out what they mean. What context are they used in? Do they have limited, alternative, or provisional meanings? Can the same term be used in different ways? Alright, so the whole thing here is leave no term undefined. Now some words I don't even know. Assiduous, plenitude, I've heard that word before, but I don't know what it is. Sagacity, something like that. People see big words like those, get turned off, and give up trying. They feel dumb because they haven't expanded their vocabulary that far. Yeah. Don't grab a dictionary, it's not that hard, is it? Or use Google. Some people are just good with words, they say. If you ever find yourself in that category, I want to tell you right now, that's nonsense. You can learn any of the hardest words in the world. It's easy once you learn the definition, the concepts underlying the word. And, if still confused, learn definitions for the conceptual words that build up to it. Yeah, there are also rules for definitions. You should check them out also. Sometimes in dictionaries, you look up a word, say blah de blah, and then blah de blah. In the dictionary it says, look up stru de stru, and then you look up stru de stru, and there it says blah de blah, you know. So that's synonymous, more or less, and that's not accepted as a definition. Blah, blah. Learn definitions for the conceptual words that build up to it. Look at the history of the word's usage. Yeah, that's what I do sometimes. I check out what the etymological dictionary says. And there you go into where does the word come from, what's the history. See what context it is used in most, what it is used in most appropriately. Work until you can use the word in a conversation and then do it. Next is reasoning, deductive and inductive. The methods of deductive and inductive reasoning are too lengthy to reproduce in this essay, but it is important to give some general sense of their nature here. Yep. Gene O. Denning, in my interview with him, if you YouTube that, Solvinur, Gene O. Denning, gave a very good explanation about deductive and inductive reasoning. So if you want to get more, go check out that YouTube. Solvinur and Gene O. Denning. That should bring it up. Deductive reasoning relates to what is known as top-down thinking, starting from basic general principles and working towards specific instances. Yeah. So I find already a contradiction in here, and we'll get to it. It says here, deductive reasoning relates to what is known as top-down thinking. And then it says, starting from basic. Alright? Base. What is base? Base is at the bottom, right? So how do you call that top-down thinking? I don't understand. Maybe, I don't know who came up with this idea, that it's top-down. Gino Denning explained it very good. He called it more or less a dance. That sounds better. You move from one place to the next place and back and move again. Kind of reasoning. Matty Clues, welcome buddy. So, starting from basic general principles and working towards specific instances. Deduction focuses on the relationship of premises to conclusion. If the premises are true, terms are clear, and rules of deduction are applied, then the conclusion must be valid. In deduction, we're seeking to arrive at certainty. Yeah, that's not always possible, but that's the idea. Example. All cars require tires to drive. John's car has no tire. Therefore, John's car will not drive. Alright, so premise 1 is all cars require tires to drive. Premise 2, John's car has no tires. Conclusion, therefore, John's car will not drive. Alright, that's an example of deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning, now we call it bottom-up. Right? So relates to bottom-up thinking, starting with specific instances. We can begin to form some sort of general principles. Again, I'm thinking that this is the other way around. You pick a couple of examples and then form a general principle. It sounds more like top-down to me, but maybe it's just me. While still using the tools of premises and conclusion, inductive reasoning hopes to arrive at probable truths. Is that so? By taking the available information, induction can only say what seems to be true, as opposed to what must be true. Induction leaves room for the possibility that the conclusion can be false, even though the premises are true. Example. Most people, there you go into the problem, right? Most people hate the smell of skunk spray. Jenny is a person, therefore Jenny probably hates the smell of skunk spray. Right? The problem is the word most here. You know, if you say most, then there's exceptions, right? So that means your conclusion could be true. There's no guarantee. Practice Matty! Did I already say hello? Yeah, I did. Welcome, anyway, again. Vince is also back. Wazza! Practice with deductive and inductive reasoning sharpens the mind by showing us the forms of arguments and exposing logical short circuits. Spotting fallacies is the next one. Ad hominem, slippery slope, appeal to authority. Such are the exclamations of those that spot a fallacy in a book or conversation. Yeah. Or on radio, TV, newspaper. When you learn the fallacies, you start to see them everywhere. Magazines, books, advertisements, political speeches, internet forums. Ooh, indeed. Heck, even my grandma spotted one the other day. They're everywhere. Lady Pitbull, what's up? Vince. Okay, buddy. There might even be a few fallacies underneath your bed or in the closet. I hope you check before you go to sleep tonight. One can never be too careful. Logical fallacies are everywhere. A list of all the fallacies, as well as the distinction between formal and informal fallacies, are outside of the scope of this essay, but any book on logic will cover them in detail. Yeah. There are common 20 or so informal fallacies. That one would be better for having memorized. Yeah. It's hard to memorize them. You should know the words like appeal to authority or appeal to pity or genetic fallacy, things like that. But recognizing them is not because you've memorized the words of the fallacy. It's because you see the logical error there. So it's good to know what kind of fallacies are out there, but it requires more training to actually spot them. Some people even make a game of spotting fallacies and calling them aloud when watching things like presidential debates or television commercials. Logical fallacies arise from one of two options, either from outright deception or just simple ignorance. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Alright? When you're talking to your neighbor and he is making a logical error, he's probably just making a mistake. Alright? But if you're if you're on the TV, you know, you can count on it that it's deception. The mere presence of a fallacy does not imply either origin. The mere presence of a fallacy. No, it depends on who says it, right? You have to know who says it. If it's Obama speaking, then it's deception. It's as simple as that. If it's the teacher on school, that might be a hard one. There's not many quote-unquote awake teachers at school, right? So he's probably giving the information as he has been taught. And since our parents weren't awake either, most of our parents, you know, we could call that a mistake. It is up to the audience to determine if the fallacy was committed maliciously or not. The presence of a fallacy does not have any bearing on the truth values of the premises or conclusions. Yeah. So also it means that if somebody is using a fallacy, doesn't mean that he's automatically incorrect about the conclusion. It's just that the way he got there is incorrect, right? So you have to figure that out too. If you spot a fallacy, it means watch out. Check it out further to see what's going on. Is he just making a mistake? Is the conclusion therefore incorrect? Those are questions. It just means that some flaws in let me start the sentence again. The presence of a fallacy does not have any bearing on the truth, values of the premises or conclusions. Yeah. Premises should always be true, but if that's not true, then you can't rely on the conclusion being made. Alright, again. The presence of a fallacy does not have any bearing on the truth, values of the premises or conclusion. It just means that some flaws in the reasoning have occurred, and so clarification must be made. Alright? Morning, Dan. Some find it wise to avoid calling out the names of fallacies, instead addressing the underlying flaw in reasoning, while others decide it best to simply call out the name of the fallacy committed and assume amends will be made. Yeah, what happens most of the time, if you say the name of the fallacy, the person that made the fallacy is looking at you like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So, if you know the name of the fallacy, you also have to be able to explain what exactly went wrong there, right? Or maybe they're just looking to score points. Whatever the case may be, and the tactic used to deal with them, logical fallacies are always an indication of faulty reasoning and should be recognized to some degree whenever they are encountered. Right? Recognition of fallacies is not just a tool for discerning the truth in others' speech or writing. It is most useful in sorting out our own thinking as well. Yeah, that's very well said. You should not only know the fallacies to be able to spot them on TV, but if you use a rhetoric, grammar, logic, rhetoric, if you're practicing rhetoric, you should have no fallacies in there, right? So it's for your own thinking as well. In all of the trivium skills, we will find many that can be applied to the self as well as to others. Now here comes a list of common logical fallacies. 1. Ad hominem. Attacking the person instead of the person's argument. Okay, hold on guys. What's going on here? Somebody's messaging me. I've got to respond to this. I'm sorry guys. Something like that. Okay, number 2. The example. I don't care what proof she has. Jill is just an idiot. Right, so you're expecting people to discard the conclusion or argument Jill made just because someone says she's an idiot, right? Hold on, guys. I'm sorry, but this is also part of my job to respond to people whispering me. Let's see. Alright, next fallacy. Straw man. Attacking a false version of a person's argument. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Straw man. Attacking a false version of a person's argument, right? So if a person makes an argument, and what happens then is they rephrase your argument in such a way that they can attack it. Then they attack that argument and say that you're wrong. Alright? Example. Evolution states that we descended from apes. Is that correct? I don't even know if that's correct. You know? You'd have to quote me from one of Darwin's books where he actually states that. Right? I don't know if he even said such a thing. And if you claim he does, then you should be able to quote Darwin on it. Right? Example. Evolution states that we descended from apes. Do you see that, people? He believes we're cousins of the monkeys. Alright, that's not a straw man. Anybody in the chat wanna have a go at this one? What kind of fallacy is this, guys? Evolution states that we descended from apes. Do you see that, people? He believes we're cousins of the monkeys. I guess you could say it's a straw man, but it's also another one. It falls also in another category. Any of you guys in the chat want to have a go at this one? What would you say? What kind of fallacy is going on here? Appeal to authority is number 3. I'll keep an eye on the chat for your answer. Anybody? Example. Evolution states that we descended from apes. Response. Do you see that, people? He believes we're cousins of the monkeys. No, not authority, Vince. Not appeal to authority. That one's next, by the way. Appeal to authority. Basing a truth... No, Vince, it's not authority. This one is. 3. Appeal to authority. Basing a truth claim on a person's perceived authority. Example. 9 out of 10 dentists agree that our toothpaste is the best. Yeah. This one could also be categorized under a different one. What do you guys say? All right, that's the second one I'm going to give you. What other fallacy? Yeah, it is appeal to authority. Maybe it could be also another one. But it is appeal to authority. Just because someone says, right, this is the idea about appeal to authority. Just because someone says it is so, you accept that as truth. Then you've committed appeal to authority. Alright guys, time's over for the second one. It's appeal to ridicule, what I see in this example. Example. Evolution states that we descended from apes. Do you see that, people? He believes we're cousins of the monkeys. He's trying to ridiculize. You see? Appeal to authority is this one, which I can also see as appeal to common practice, right? 9 out of 10 dentists agree that our toothpaste is the best. Could that also be appeal to common practice? Right? So appeal to authority means anybody that says something. Doesn't have to be an expert. Huh? He could be a newsreader, right? And you believe what he says. Then you've committed appeal to authority. Right there, or when you read in the newspaper, experts say, and then blah de blah de blah. If you believe the blah de blah de blah, then you've committed the fallacy again, because you don't know what experts they are talking about. They could be experts in rain dancing, you know, and they might be talking about mathematics, right? So you have to have a name with the expert, right? So it's unnamed authority is the problem there. 4. Appeal to popularity, also known as bandwagon fallacy. Basing a truth claim on the fact that many people agree with it. Right? That would be the 9 out of 10 dentists, right? Appeal to popularity or appeal to common practice. Example. I'm telling you, Terminator 9 is good. Everybody's talking about it. Yeah. Yep, that's appeal to popularity. 5. Begging the question. This is a difficult one. Sometimes can be difficult. It's also known as circular logic. Basing a truth claim on the claim itself. It doesn't beg the question if it leads you to ask other questions. That's raising the question. Example. Our book teaches you the truth. It says so right here. Right in the same book. Right? So it's leading back to its own. You see? That's circular. Very small one. It goes A, B, A. Right? A is our book teaches you the truth. B is it says so right here. And it says it in the same book, which leads back to A. You see? This kind of circular reasoning can also go A, B, C, D, C, B, A. Alright, so be careful of that. Sometimes you get that circular reasoning like A, B, C, D, C, B, A, and then a lot of different words are used. Right? So be careful. Look up the words. 6. Loaded question. Assuming the presumption of guilt in the question. Example. So why did you shoot the sheriff? Alright, so that's a simple one, right? 7. Red herring. Distracting away from the topic. That's a good explanation. Example. Oh, you think I'm being pushy? Well, what about that time you flirted with that girl at the bar? You're a pig. Alright, I don't know what exactly this is supposed to be distracting upon. But, you know, the end, you're a pig, sounds more like an ad hominem. Non sequitur is 8. When the conclusion does not follow from the premises. Example, children are dying in Africa, so you should eat at McDonald's. Right? That doesn't follow, right? Non sequitur. Notice structure is the next heading. This essay, Lumperdiddle, welcome buddy. This essay is arranged to focus on learning study skills by arranging them into 3 trivium categories. There are words before and after the skills section, but the focus remains clear. Because of this, you know that I put great importance upon the skills, but what if I choose to put less emphasis upon them and instead devoted more words to the introductory sections or to the latter sections on emotional and physical development? The reader might assume that the skills are less important than the rest of the topics. If I did that, it could be argued that I intentionally deceived the readers, or that I decided it better to let them figure it out for themselves rather than provide the clues openly. Perhaps I just dropped hints throughout the text that the skills were truly important, leaving only the discerning reader the ability to know the hidden message. Either way, the structure of the writing informs the outcome to some degree. Alright, there's a statement next to this in kind of bigger letters. What the heck is that, Lumper? Is that in the Haaretz? Seriously? Can you link that Haaretz, Lumper? I'd like to bookmark that. To smack him over the head with, you know. In any presentation you encounter, there will be a structure to it that you can discern. Is the kind of big letters here. Moving on. By paying attention to the structure, more knowledge and understanding can be gained from the writing. More information can be revealed to the reader. Right? I don't like the word revealed. Right? It sounds too much like revealed. Right? To veil something means you've hidden it. Right? So reveal means you've hidden it again. Unveil would be the better one. And then usually what you find out is there's another veil behind the first veil and maybe another one. That's also the problem with some of these symbols, right? They can have more than one explanation. Yeah, that's from Press TV. You know, I don't say that what Press TV does is always bad, but do they have a link to the actual source? Alright, what's the Haaretz source? That's why I asked, you know, give me the Haaretz source. See, there's no actual source in the there's no link to the source in the article. You see? So please, go find it, you know? Be very specific in your claims. You know, Lumper, I'm not pushing on you specifically, you know? You're as good a dude as anybody in this chat room. But if you make such claims, make sure your sources are valid. You know, if the New York Times says that it's global warming, then you should be able to find a newspaper from the New York Times itself, not from the Washington Post. You see? Alright, Lumper. Very good, buddy. Because without credible sources, and I'm not saying that the New York Times is a credible source, but if you claim that the New York Times said such and such, then when you use the New York Times as a source, it is credible. Even if they're lying, it's still a credible source. You understand? Okay. Now, where were we, guys? It also helps to understand the whole piece by noticing how its parts are arranged. Perhaps the first 3 chapters of a book are really just an outline of a principal argument, the next 2 chapters containing a second argument. Well, if you need 3 chapters to outline one argument, then, you know, I don't know what's up, but that doesn't seem like very good writing. By noticing this, we don't get lost in seeing each chapter as an argument in themselves, but instead as parts to a whole. Upon finishing the book, maybe, we've realized that in 12 chapters the author outlined 3 principal arguments, rather than seeing chapter after chapter of smaller points. And maybe those 3 arguments combine to form a larger unspoken argument. Compare is the next heading. Compare expectations to experience. Yes, Merkan. Of course it is. Like I said, even if they're lying, if you make a claim about somebody said something, right? Mr. X said so and so. Even if the so-and-so is a lie, if you actually can source it back to Mr. X, it's a credible source that he's lying. You understand? I'm not saying that you should read the New York Times because they always speak the truth. That's not what I understand to be a credible source. All right? Compare expectations to experience is the next heading. Here comes a kind of long paragraph. Somebody said something. Boswell's Life of Johnson. This is probably from a book. Life of Johnson by Boswell. I know not anything more pleasant or more instructive than to compare experience with expectation. Yeah, that's what they lack in this so-called research field, quantum mechanics. You know, when they talk about simple things like light, well, the experience doesn't match up with the expectation. So what do we do? You know, yeah, they make up new rules instead of throwing away the old ones, which made them have the expectation. You know, that's a logical fallacy as well. That's bad reasoning. Continuing, or to register from time to time the difference between ideas and reality. This is a good one for last week, right? Remember that discussion we had about reality? It is by this kind of observation that we grow daily less liable to be disappointed. You, who are very capable of anticipating futurity, what the heck is that, guys? Did you actually get it, Lumper? Blah blah blah. Haaretz.com. Our views on Amma's Birdman's cartoons. Haaretz editor-in-chief Alouf Ben on controversy surrounding a recent editorial cartoon. Haaretz values Israel's friendship. They call it friendship, right? With the United States as an unparalleled strategic asset and as a backbone of Israel's existence. Well, actually, you should look more to London for that. All right? Balfour Declaration, 1917. Asset and backbone of Israel's existence, security and prosperity. Yeah, because you can't take care of yourself, right? That's the whole reason why Israel was in that place, by the way. It's to wage war. That was the whole reason for putting it there and not somewhere else. We expect any prime minister, any What do you mean any? You mean all the Israeli ones or something, or what? We expect any prime minister to do the utmost to develop the relationship and not to undermine America's support through harmful policies, fueled by short-lived political considerations, at the expense of Israel's key national interest. Amos Bilderman's editorial cartoon was a reaction to the current state of mistrust between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Obama administration. Really? Is there mistrust there? Do you guys believe that? As reflected in Jeffrey Goldsberg's story in The Atlantic, our famed veteran cartoonist was aiming his criticism at Netanyahu's recent announcement of new settlement expansion plans in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, and at his insinuations that America is acting against Israel, depicting them as a wrong turn in Israeli policy that has rightfully elicited strong criticisms from Washington. Alright, I don't get that sentence. Bilderman sought to warn against what he views as a grave threat to Israel if its leadership continues to escalate its diplomatic confrontation with the United States. Excuse me? He meant to warn with that picture? Huh. I could repeat Clinton here, right? How dare you? Needless to say, Haaretz deeply honors and respects the memory of American and other victims of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on New York and Washington. We regret any misreading of Biderman's image as disrespectful to those who perished or to survivors of this horrible crime. We reject any linkage between Bilderman's cartoon and patently false anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, yeah right, about alleged Israeli involvement in the 9/11 attacks. Yeah. Haaretz has never given any stage to these defamatory libels, which were in no way on the mind of the cartoonist or the newspaper's editors. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, right? You want to warn and then make such a picture? How do you not include Israeli involvement then, right? And what about USS Liberty? It's not like they're not capable of it, you know? They're very suspect. Qui bono, you know? Israel is very suspect in the whole 9/11 business. Alright? Thank you for that link, Lumper. You see? They didn't even put the picture back on. Yeah. Alright. Let's, lol lady. I'm sure they are truly broken up about 9/11. Yeah, right. Yeah. Alright, so where were we? You who are very capable of anticipating futurity and erasing phantoms before your own eyes must often have imagined to yourself an academic life and have conceived what would be the manners, the views and the conversations of men devoted to letters. What's that? Men devoted to letters. I don't understand that. how they would choose their companions, how they would direct their studies, and how they would regulate their lives. Let me know what you have expected and what you have found. That is from Boswell's Life of Johnson. Alright guys, hold on. To compare what you expect with what you experience is a tremendous source of insight in anyone's life situation, I guess this should say. We learn the best sometimes through analogy, by way of comparison. It helps to be aware of our own expectations, our preconceived notions, because that is the standard we measure our experience with. More accurate adjustment in our thinking and perceptions, no, not perceptions, more accurate adjustments in our thinking and perceptions, alright, can be made when we actually seek what is truly there. Alright guys, I've got a trouble with the word perception here. Alright. Perception is what you do with your senses. Alright, you can't change how you hear, right? It's the same thing over and over again. What you do with what you hear can be changed. Alright, but that's not perceiving. That's something else. That would be, I guess, thinking. Alright? So, keep in mind definition for perception here, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I don't care. Maybe you guys have a different definition for perception, and this sentence makes perfect sense to you. More accurate adjustments in our thinking and perceptions can be made when we actually seek what is truly there, as opposed to clinging blindly to what we believed to be. This also ties back to the discussion we had last week about reality. What better way to become aware of context or intentions? It's better to level your expectations to the reality of a situation rather than insisting that reality conforms to your beliefs. Yeah, exactly. This is, he's spouting objectivism here, which is fine with me, as far as I'm concerned. Alright, then, definition of perception. Noun, the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. Exactly. Matty clue, you can train yourself to perceive differently, I would think. But he gets what I'm saying. Alright, Matt. Fine. Good. Good. Yeah, it's almost the same in Dutch, Dan. Perceptie. Yeah. I would have to look up the etymological roots of that. In Dutch, we call it your senses, right? Eyes, ears. We call them zintuig. Those are two words. The first is zin, which actually means a sentence. Right? Words put together. Strange, huh? So senses. Sentence. Alright, let's pick this up where we were. This is a good one. I'm going to repeat this because it's a good one. It's it should give you an idea of objectivism. What better way to become aware of context or intentions? Isn't it better to level your expectations to the reality of a situation rather than insisting that reality conform to your beliefs? Right, that's an important one. Learning through... it's top of the hour. We're going to do some poker face soon, guys. Learning through experience is the best instruction available. Having the flexibility to adjust to reality is crucial and will save you a lot of trouble. Alright, next heading. Yeah. Before we go there, we're gonna do some poker face. Yeah, buddies. Hold on. Let me put this here. Blah, blah, blah. Hold on, guys. Here we go. Ta-da! Poker face. We'll be right back, guys.
liberty.
That was Poker Face, guys. So yeah, Freedom, that was called. There's a bit of a discussion about perception in the chat room. Merkin says, keep watching Fox and CNN and get a reality, no, see, that's what I'm reading, right? And get a really altered perception where you believe you must remain a slave forever. Alright? I wouldn't say Jew, that's what he says, but if you're gonna say something like that, say EGP, right? Elite Jew Pig. I like that, you know? That's more specific, because it's not all of the Jews. There's just a few of them that mess it up for everybody, you know? Those are elite Jew pigs. Think of Charles, right? And he explains it very well. He also distinguishes between those Jews and the elite pigs, right? That's not discrimination. It's calling the what do you call that in English? In Dutch we say call it by its name, right? But, you know, keep watching Fox. Hold on, the chat is moving. Keep watching Fox and CNN and get a really altered perception, right? I don't think that what you perceive is different. The conclusions you draw about what you perceive are different from reality, right? So the worldview that you get from those people, which is not a perception but a worldview, is not conforming to reality. You understand? There's perception, there's reality. Those are two different things. Alright, let's pick this up. More and further. What is more? What is further? These questions are found throughout the Catechism style book I mentioned, Building Athens. Sounds rather Masonic, right? They are powerful tools calling us to look deeper, to seek what is beyond the obvious. The search for truth teaches us not to stop at the immediate face of things, to look beyond the facade of what is presented to us, and to see what else there is to know about the subject. John Medina's book, Brain Rules, ends with a topic I was going to begin this essay with: curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat, but it made the human being. Yeah. It's a nice trait. Medina describes how curiosity is at the bedrock of human imagination. The thing that keeps us looking for more answers and seeing things from different angles. Curiosity yep. Curiosity causes us to ask the big questions in life. Is it the reason we once held beliefs about the stars? I don't get this sentence. How am I supposed to read this? Is it the reason we once held beliefs about the stars? That's the sentence, guys. It ends there with a dot. How do I read this so that it's understandable? I don't know. We looked up and wondered, and over time our observations were turned into myths about the sky. Curiosity doesn't ask, can we do this? But instead screams, how can this be done? It was curiosity that led our mammalian ancestors to come down from the trees and wander off into unknown distances. Well, I don't know if that's true. You know, it could also have been gigantic atmospheric changes in the climate that made us come, you know, assuming that we actually did come down from the trees. But that's probably the more likely reason why we came down from the trees, because there were no more trees. They started going away due to climatic changes taking thousands and thousands of years. You see? And we started wandering in more grassy land things. Steppes, as we call it in Dutch. I don't know what it's called in English. So, I don't know if it was curiosity that led the mammalian ancestors to come down from trees. Shortening our arms but enlarging our brains, if you believe in that sort of thing. He puts it in brackets behind it, so that's okay. He doesn't, you know, say, well, this is how it is, you know. Is it the thing? No, not is it. It is the thing that leads us to seek our potential and the reason for our accomplishments as a species, successes and failures alike. It is our greatest human resource. I wouldn't agree with that. I think intellect is the greatest human resource. Stay curious, he says. Curious minds seek better ways of organizing information to come to new understanding about the body of knowledge. Alright? To come to new understanding about the body of knowledge means grammar, knowledge, grammar, knowledge, understanding, logic. Right? Those are two of the three of the trivium. Scrolling down some empty space here, guys. Rhetoric. What you talking about, Willis? The paraphrase. When learning to write, and by writing, you can discover, organize, and clarify your thinking. Yeah, that's what that teacher also did a lot. That I mentioned in the first hour, whose name I still can't come up with. Somebody in the chat should know who I'm talking about. Oh my God, a New York teacher. He also stated when he was like, I think I understand something about this grammar, right? Then he would start writing about it and see where he would still have misunderstandings, right? So that's always a good step. think about something before you say, right? Rhetoric is in your mind also. The thinking in your mind is also a kind of rhetoric. And so if you think before you say, you're practicing rhetoric. And if you can't make correct sentences, right, then there's something wrong. Long ago, a friend of mine who's also a philosopher told me, if you can't explain something, then you don't understand it. Right? That's exactly right. If you've gone through the first 2 steps, grammar and logic, and you think you understand it, then you should be able to use rhetoric, or to rhetoricize, whatever you call it. If you fail to do so, then there's something wrong with your understanding. Otherwise you would be able to explain. Well, let's start this again. When learning to write, and by writing you can discover, organize and clarify your thinking, one of the most powerful exercises you have is to paraphrase. To start, you simply take a passage from a book and rewrite it in your own words. Try and capture the essence of what was said, putting it in a way that is unique to you. Yes, Dan, rhetoric, the art of effective, or I would say and, persuasive speaking, and or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. Yes, not only that though, it also means the use of the first 2 steps. Right? So if somebody, he gives you grammar, let's say wood, and a lighter, right, some straw, and he teaches you how these different building blocks fit together to make a fire, right? Then the rhetoric is also actually creating the fire, the use of the first 2 steps, all right? So that's also rhetoric. Practice with varying lengths. First paraphrase the passage into 1 sentence, then 2 sentences, and then a paragraph. So take a paragraph and try to fit it in 1 sentence. Should be able to do sometimes. When the paragraph is explaining one thing, right, you should be able to fit that in 1 sentence. This works for conversational situations too. Conversational. Take a conversation you recently had and try to put it into 1 sentence. Then try putting it into 2 sentences, then 3 sentences, and so on. Alright, I don't see the use of that. If you can put it in 1 sentence, that's good, No need to spend more time on something you've explained correctly. This exercise forces you to look at the essence of a group of ideas to comprehend the underlying meaning in any communication. Rhetoric, right? It also gives you exercise in word selection and phrasing. You should always keep a dictionary and what the heck is that? Thesaurus at hand. It's probably some kind of dictionary. Copy that. Put that in the Google. Paste. What is it? Search. Already. Come on. Why are you so slow? Largest and most trusted free online says brought to you by dictionary.com. Right? So what is it actually? Synonyms and antonyms with quotations and translated to other languages. In de klassieke betekenis is de thesaurus een soort naslagwerk. So it means, well, it's a bit more than a dictionary, right? But it's not an encyclopedia. It's something between those. Naslagwerk. Yeah, that's such. All right. Another use of paraphrase in a conversation is to reiterate back to the other person what it is you think they just said or are trying to get at. Yes, that's, I see that happen sometimes in the chat. Somebody says something and then somebody else says, did you mean? And then blah 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 blah. And then, no, that's not what I meant. See, so language is difficult apparently sometimes, right? This gives them an opportunity to see if they are, in fact, getting their point across well. And it gives you the chance to perfect your ability to find the essence of someone's communication to you. Hey, Anon37. Welcome. Gio, I see also. Welcome. So many misunderstandings can be avoided if people check to make sure they know what the other person is saying. Yeah. Check your terms, terminology, definitions. Benjamin Franklin used the paraphrase pretty well. This is probably what Benjamin Franklin said. It starts with a quote, quotations open, so. About this time I met with an odd volume of The Spectator. It was the third. I had never seen any of them before. I bought it, read it over and over, and was much delighted with it. I thought the writing excellent, and wished, if possible, to imitate it. With this view, I took some of the papers and, making short hints of the sentiment in each sentence, laid them by a few days. He put them away for a few days, I guess. And then, without looking at the book, tried to complete the papers again by expressing each hinted sentiment at length and as fully as it had been expressed before in any suitable words that should come to hand. Then I compared my Spectator with the original, discovered some of my faults and corrected them. Alright, that's a good training. But I found I wanted a stock of words, or a readiness in recollecting and using them, which I thought I should have acquired before that time if I had gone on making verses, since the continual occasion for words of the same import but of different length to suit the measure, or of different sound for the rhyme, would have laid me under a constant necessity of searching for variety, and also have tended to fix that variety in my mind, or make me master of it. Therefore, I took some of the tales and turned them into verse, and, after a time, when I had pretty well forgotten the prose, turned them back again. I also sometimes jumbled my collection of hints into confusion, and after some weeks endeavored to reduce them into the best order before I began to form the full sentences and complete the paper. Write something at the side here in bigger letters. The problem that vexed the ancients in their effort to gain control of language varied little from those that trouble us today. Really? You know, I'm not an expert in Sanskrit, right? I readily admit that. Not by far, I'm not an expert. But that language seems to have more control than English when it comes to expressing reality. This was to teach me method in the arrangement of thought. By comparing my work afterwards with the original, I discovered many faults and amended them. But I sometimes had the pleasure of fancying that, in certain particulars of small import, I had been lucky enough to improve the method or the language, and this encouraged me to think I might, possibly in time, come to be a tolerable English writer, of which I was extremely ambitious. Yeah. Another paraphrase exercise, the Chreia, something like that, Chreia, is found in Clapp and Can's wonderful old book on rhetoric, How to Talk. It's available at the Internet Archive, apparently. Alright, Clapp, like C-L-A-P-P, and Keynes, K-A-N-E, How to Talk, book on rhetoric. In the paraphrase, your effort is to supply appropriate words and to fit them to the author's scheme for the thought of the passage. Here is another exercise in which, supplied with an idea, you develop it for yourself in the most effective language you can muster. Choose an old saying or select from a work you may happen to be reading a particular assertion or remark, and without reading the author's development of the idea, proceed for yourself to expand the statement in any way you please. Talk right out. Present your thoughts to a mirror in as convincing a manner as you can. Right? That's dialectic. Right? There should be dialectic going on in your head when you think. That's present your thoughts to a mirror. Right? Or if you have a companion in the task of improving speech technique, the two of you may profitably play audience for each other. For this is exactly what you do in conversation or in discussion when the statement of another draws from you the development of support or opposition. It is the thing that you are prompted to do in your club meeting. Club meeting. Right? Club of Rome. Right? The thing that they hit you over the head with. Only in this exercise you may be patient with yourself. You will have no interruptions. You can present your whole flow of thoughts. Just try this exercise. You will find that it provides a whole series of steps in the process of making flow of language serve the flow of thought. Yeah. That's interesting. How can you think in anything other than a language, right? You will discover that the fluency we admire so much in certain others is to be had for the fair price of application and industry required to persist in the exercises that build or help to build a valuable habit. Practical device of the Greeks. There is nothing new about this exercise. You can try it in its earliest forms. It was the device of What? Apthonius. Let's put that into Google and see what we get, guys. Blah, blah. Google. Paste that there and see what we get. And it says, did you mean device of? Let's see. You get a whole lot of Jesus stuff. Let's see what we get here, guys. Kraïa and Ancient Rhetoric. So from books.com, Amazon, books.google, more Google, discussion at Apple. Next. The Deliverance of God. Yeah. This is a device which lends wonderful variety and animation to oratory. Okay. A device, huh? Interesting. Renaissance figures of speech comes into Google. More Renaissance. Device. Let's see what this says here. Ekphrases from the Greek description of a work of art, possibly imaginary, produced as a rhetorical exercise. Okay, so device. I didn't think of something imaginary there, but who knows, right? And it is graphic, often dramatic description of a visual work of art in ancient times. It referred to a description of anything, person, or experience. The word comes from the Greek eik and phrases. Ek means out and phrases means speak, respectively. Ekphrasen, speak out, right? To proclaim or call an inanimate object by name. Definition. Ekphrasis has been considered generally to be a rhetorical device in which one medium of art tries to relate to another medium by defining and describing its essence and form, and in doing so relate more directly to the audience through its illuminative liveliness. A description work of prose and poetry, a film, or even a photograph may thus highlight through its rhetorical vividness what is happening or what is shown in, say, any of the visual arts, and in doing so may enhance the original art and so take on a life of its own through its brilliant description. Right? The definition goes on, but I guess we get the idea here. So we'll pick this up again from the PDF that we're reading from. It was the device of Apthonius, one of the ancient rhetoricians, who proposed to his pupils a chria, something like that, a suggestive sentence to be developed by certain rules. Often the chria was a maxim or proverb current on the lips of the people. At times it was a statement from the writings of one of the great philosophers. Yeah, one of the great deceivers, I would say. Or it might be the statement of a fact involving the expressions of a truth. To develop any of the forms of the chria, Apthonius proposed 8 different plans. 1. By commendation or approval of the saying. 2. by a paraphrase expressing the meaning of the sentence in other words with some further development or explanation. 3. By cause of reason, telling why the maxim is true or why the fact is as stated. 4. By indicating a resemblance, illustrating by comparison with similar things. 5. By contrast, illustrating by comparison with contrary things. 6. By giving examples. 7. By citing testimonies or authorities. And 8. By conclusion or appeal addressed to the mind or heart of the listener. Hey Jax, how you doing, buddy? The problem that vexed the ancients in their efforts to... Did we do that already? That's strange, right? The problems that vexed the ancients and their efforts to gain control of language varied little from those that trouble us today. Yeah. I would say there, I don't see that. Especially not from an elitist point of view. They're using the language exactly as they planned. Yeah. Language is to control people's minds. That's what it's for. That's the only reason. They teach you to read at school. It's to control you. No other reason. It's not because, oh, well, if we don't teach these humans to read, they're going to be so poor. No, they might actually start thinking for themselves. You have to teach them to read so you can influence their mind, you see? So I don't see any problem from an elitist standpoint of view. Yeah. The formulas listed by Ophthalmius for developing a thought are those which have been followed in all ages. Yeah, I wouldn't call that developing a thought. I mean, he's talking about giving more words to something that has already been said. Alright, that's not developing a thought. Developing a thought means original thought. You know? Lady likes it. Way to go, Lady Pitbull. You will find them interestingly outlined with illustrations from modern writers and speakers. In Genungs, or Genungs, sounds German, Genungs, working principles of rhetoric, or Baldwin's oral and writing composition. Right, both of these titles are available at the Internet Archive as well. Scrolling over some empty space. The rhetorical triangle is next. Interesting. Here is where you begin to see that rhetoric is not only useful for composition, but for analysis as well. Yeah. In my opinion, the triangle should be the first device you use in any rhetorical moment, as it organizes the various parts and allows you to use further tools of analysis, such as checking for fallacies and logical consistency. I think you mean this, lady. Let me put that in the chat for you. Probably unpronounceable in English. Yeah. Yeah, it's Dutch. Okay. There are few different versions of the triangle that I have seen, but I think the best is the most basic. Each of the 3 points separates the author, the text, and the audience. Encircling the triangle is context. Right away, it's clear that this device makes certain distinctions, and those distinctions help you see through the illusion of the moment. Yeah, there's something about triangles and circles that is probably worth mentioning. What is it again? Let's see, we got this triangle, and then you circle it. A circle in the middle, right? So you've got a triangle with a base and then 2 lines to the top, right? And then you can draw a circle within the triangle, touching the lines. And then you can draw a circle outside of the triangle, touching the points of the triangle. And there's a very specific relation between those 2 circles. Right? And you can even draw a further triangle around the outer circle, right? So you get triangle, and then, so you get circle in the middle, triangle around, circle again, triangle around. There seems to be a 1:2 proportion in there, which I find kind of astonishing, just like a 3, 4, 5 triangle. How can that exactly be 1:2, right? Alright, this triangle here in the PDF, though, has author at the left bottom, audience at the bottom right, and then text at the top, and then a huge circle around it, not touching any of the points of the triangle, and that would be context. All right. Normally, people are exposed to advertisements with little thought to the company's intention. Really? Are you that dumb? Sorry, but you know. Advertisement professionals use our base fears to sell us products. Yes, that happens a lot. The meaning, Dan, means it's German. It actually has Germanic roots. Voltaire, which is more like the English pronunciation, right? Walter, comes from Waldherr. Wald is woods, and Herr is Lord, they translate it as. So it becomes Woodlord, Lord of the Woods. Woud, Wouter, as we say in Dutch, woud is also wood. Woods, trees, lots of trees. That would be woud. But then it's with a D. Advertisers love using logical fallacies. Their product, they say, is just the thing we need to fit in or to look better. When you put the advertisement on the rhetorical triangle, you can consciously start to separate what they're telling you from the probable intention, and therefore not be influenced by unconscious persuaders. If you realize that cosmetic companies are preying on your desire to look young or fit, then perhaps you can choose not to be manipulated in that way, or at the least not to feel the desire to have to obtain every new product that comes out promising to take 10 years off your skin. Alright. Yeah, ruler of the woods, lady. Yeah. Sounds Celtic-like, doesn't it? Or druid-like, something like that. Yeah. I got this name from my grandfather. His name was also Wouter, so yeah. By considering the author's intention, we can glean a lot of knowledge about the integrity of the message. Likewise, when we are composing or writing, we can use the triangle to consciously determine what our intention is. What? Don't you start out with an intention? How would you consciously determine what your intention is? Isn't it you have an intention and then you try to put that onto paper? How would you consciously determine what your own intention is? Don't you know that already? Isn't that like set beforehand? I don't know. Anyway, let's try this again. Likewise, when we are composing or writing, we can use the triangle to consciously determine what our intention is and craft our message for the specific audience we are trying to reach, given the overall context we are in. Alright, I don't quite understand this. The competent use of rhetoric is a skill we should all be practiced in, but unfortunately our education system deems it largely unworthy, and even in those brief instances where rhetoric is touched upon, not teached, that would be taught, is touched upon in some English class, is taught inadequately without the full knowledge of rhetoric's importance and what it can do. For anyone interested in really sinking their teeth into the subject of rhetoric, you can do no better than to start with the revised edition of J. Heinrich's book. That's German, Heinrich. J. Heinrich, H-E-I-N-R-I-C-H, Heinrich. Definitely German. Thank you for arguing, J. Heinrich. Thank you for arguing. Argument, right? If you want to learn rhetoric, just go buy that book today. The second best book, Classical Rhetoric for the Modern Student, 4th edition, is much pricier, but it covers in more depth many of the principles Heinrichs covers. Although without the palatable examples of Homer Simpson quotes or the analysis of Barack Obama's speaking skills. Yeah, he's a very good speaker, right? Knows exactly how to manipulate people's minds. 5 Canons of Rhetoric is the next heading. When you are planning to write something, you need a subject. Yeah. And again, I've got it the other way around, you know. There's something in your mind about which you would like to write. It's there before you want to write about it. You don't go sit at the table and say, well, I want to write something, and then come up with a subject, right? This doesn't make any sense to me. There's something that you think needs to be written down, and therefore the subject is already there. Then you have to have something to say about the subject, some angle from which you will cover it. Yeah. Some angle from which you will cover it. Alright, maybe this is just a philosopher speaking out and speaking up in me, right? But if I write something, it's supposed to be true. And I don't think what angle you use. If you look at truth, it's truth. Some angle from which you will cover it. Sounds like, well, I'm a right-wing politician, so I'm going to write from that angle instead of a left-wing politician. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Various points you would like to make. This is called invention. Alright, is that what's called invention? Alright. Then you have to consider the order in which you give your points. Which points should come first? Which ones support the main argument? And what you should end it with. This is called arrangement. Alright. To recall back to the rhetorical triangle, you have to consider your audience. Yeah. I don't do that, by the way. I don't consider my audience at all. I say what I have to say regardless of who's listening. Depending on who is in that audience, what their tastes and preferences are, your choice of words and phrasing will change. No, it won't. Not with me, it won't. I don't care who you are. I'm going to say what I want to say in my own words. There is something that comes to mind, though. I do treat people differently depending on how I view them. That does happen. You wouldn't address an audience of school children the same way you would a company of doctors. This is called style. Alright? Now let's see. I wouldn't address an audience of school children the same way I would a company of doctors. Actually, I would put more faith in the children than I would in the doctors, because the doctors are already stuck in their mindset. I would expect a more open mind with the children. They are more able to use their intelligence as the doctor is. Because the doctor is already stuck in their materialistic view. Your next consideration, well, I'm sorry guys for taking apart this example of children and doctors, but your next consideration is whether or not you will give your presentation from memory or from notes or even read from a text. Yeah, like I'm doing now, right? Reading from a text. Will you just have a few sketches of your argument and plan to improvise the rest as you go? That is called memory. Finally, when all of those other considerations are taken care of, you have to figure out how you're going to present this information. Is it a recording, a writing, a live speech? When speaking, it is important to think about the tone of your voice, your sense of rhythm and speed, the volume of your voice, and when to raise it or lower it, and so on. This is called delivery. Together, these comprise the 5 canons of rhetoric. Alright, so that was good information. Yes, it was. 3 of the rhetoric books previously mentioned are particularly useful in learning the canons. Classical Rhetoric for the Modern Student 4th edition covers invention, arrangement and style in great depth, providing not only explanation but also rhetorical analysis of various pieces of historical writing. Thank You for Arguing covers all of the canons but memory, giving examples from popular culture and ancient writing. How to Talk by Clapp and Kane gives the most to the canon of delivery. And finally, for the canon of memory, Francis Yates' Art of Memory is a valuable resource. Alright, so the 5 are invention, are arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. Next is topics of invention. The topics of invention, or common topics, could fit within the study of logic, because they are ways in which the mind thinks about a problem. I suggest they be learned along with the logical fallacies. Interesting. The article by Richard Larson, Discovery Through Questioning, turns the topics into a series of questions that can be asked about the subject, and anyone looking for ways to ask better questions would do well to study that article. This helps you figure out what to say. The topics of invention are definition, A, genus, B, division, also for explanation of genus, and differentia, or division. Check out the video I mentioned in the first hour with Gene O. Denning and Solvinur on YouTube. He goes into that, explains it very good. GENEODENING at YouTube. Yeah, he does it much better than I do, guys. Comparison is A, B, and C is similarity, difference, and degree. Relationship, A, B, C, D. Cause and effect, antecedent and consequence. C, contraries, D, contradictions. Alright, those two, contraries and contradictions, also come back in a very difficult to understand quadrant, I believe you call it, quadrant, which will help you in your logical reasoning. Alright, contraries and contradictions are two of the four that come in that quadrant, and this quadrant helps you determine which is correct, which is incorrect, which is true. Then circumstance, A and B, possible and impossible, past fact and future fact. How does that work, past fact and future fact? Does a fact become not a fact at some point? Are there things that are not a fact now but will be in the future? That doesn't make any sense to me. That which is a fact, at least with my definition of the word fact, will always stay so. You know, facts don't change. What's true is true. Now, in the past, and in the future. I don't know what that is. I just don't understand. The next is testimony, which go from E to F. Authority, testimonials, statistics, he meant lies, maxims, laws, and precedents, examples. Right, so C is statistics. Classical rhetoric for the modern student goes into most depth about the topics, and even gives a few rhetorical analyses that outline the use of the topics in famous speeches and writings. It is amazing how well... that's the end of my radio. Thanks, and on 37, Dan, Jax, Jules, Lady Pitbull, Les8, Lumper, Ocelli, Vince, Gio, Mercon, and Tuanons. Stay tuned to UCY.tv. I will be back next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a